Chicago, 1893. The city was alive with light, innovation, and millions of visitors drawn to the wonder of the World's Fair. But hidden just a few streets away from the crowds and celebration stood a building that would later be known by a far darker name, the Murder Castle. Inside its walls, guests checked in, and some were never seen again. He called himself H. Holmes, a charming doctor, a businessman, a man who knew exactly how to earn your trust. To the world, he appeared educated, polite, even refined. But behind the smile was a mind obsessed with control, deception, and death. For more than a century, Holmes has been remembered as America's first serial killer. A monster who turned an ordinary hotel into a labyrinth of secrets. Gas chambers, hidden corridors, soundproof rooms. Stories so disturbing, they blur the line between history and legend. Long before the world would know the name H. Holmes, he was born as Herman Webster Mudgett in 1861 in the quiet town of Gilmanton, New Hampshire. Raised in a strict religious household, Herman appeared to be an intelligent and disciplined child. Yet behind the image of a well-behaved boy were early signs of isolation, fascination with science, and a growing ability to manipulate those around him. As he grew older, that intelligence turned into ambition. Herman enrolled in medical school at the University of Michigan, where he gained access to laboratories and cadavers, an opportunity that would shape both his knowledge and his reputation. During this time, he reportedly began experimenting with deception, using stolen identities and staged accidents to carry out early insurance fraud schemes. Even before becoming H. Holmes, he was learning how to exploit trust for personal gain. Charm quickly became his greatest weapon. He married multiple women, often under different names, leaving behind a trail of lies that stretched across several states. Friends and colleagues described him as polite, educated, and persuasive, the kind of man people wanted to believe. It was during these years that Herman Webster Mudgett began transforming into the persona that history would remember. Reinventing himself as Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, he stepped into a new identity, not just as a doctor, but as a master con artist, refining the skills that would later allow him to build an empire of deception in the heart of Chicago. Near the fairgrounds, Holmes began building what looked like a normal hotel. From the outside, it didn't stand out. Shops on the ground floor, rooms for rent above, and a steady flow of guests looking for a place to stay during the World's Fair. But the way it was built raised questions. Contractors were constantly replaced, sections of the structure changed, and no worker ever seemed to understand the full design. Inside, the layout was unusual. Some hallways led to dead ends, certain doors opened into unexpected spaces, and the structure felt confusing even to people who worked there. Later, newspapers would label the building the Murder Castle, describing hidden rooms and strange architectural choices. While the hotel operated as a business, Holmes continued presenting himself as a respectable doctor and entrepreneur, building trust with employees, visitors, and the local community. As Holmes's reputation grew, so did the number of people drawn into his orbit. Employees, lovers, and business partners entered his life quickly, and some of them disappeared just as suddenly. Many trusted him completely, seeing him as a successful doctor and a man with connections and money. Behind the charm, he maintained control over finances, relationships, and even identities, often convincing others to sign documents or follow plans that only benefited him. Over time, a pattern began to emerge. People would grow close to Holmes, become financially or emotionally dependent on him, and then disappear from public view. As suspicion slowly built, the image of a respectable businessman began to crack. revealing a far darker reality hidden beneath his carefully constructed persona. Holmes's downfall didn't begin with murder charges. It began with money. By the mid-1890s, his growing web of fraud schemes started to collapse, especially a failed insurance plot involving his associate Benjamin Petzel. The plan was meant to fake a death and collect a payout, but it quickly drew the attention of investigators. Detective Frank Geyer was assigned to follow the trail Holmes had left behind across multiple cities. What started as a financial investigation soon turned into something much darker, as Geyer uncovered evidence connected to missing children and suspicious travel records linked to Holmes's many aliases. As authorities dug deeper, the carefully crafted image of a charming doctor began to unravel. Witnesses came forward, former associates shared information, and inconsistencies in Holmes's stories became impossible to ignore. In 1894, he was finally arrested in Boston, ending years of movement between cities under false identities. The case against him grew rapidly, shifting from fraud to a much larger investigation that would capture national attention and turn Holmes from a respected businessman into one of the most feared figures in American crime history. The trial of H.H. Holmes quickly became a national spectacle. Newspapers followed every detail, presenting him as a calculating killer and turning the courtroom into a stage watched across the country. Holmes remained calm and controlled throughout the proceedings, often appearing more like a confident professional than a man facing execution. As the investigation gained attention, Holmes began giving interviews and making shocking confessions. In one widely published statement, he claimed responsibility for 27 murders, describing victims who included former employees, romantic partners, and business associates. He spoke about killing Benjamin Petzel after a failed insurance scheme, and he implied that several women who had worked in his Chicago building had died inside rooms he controlled. Investigators, however, focused on the crimes they could actually prove through physical evidence. Benjamin Petzel's body was found in Philadelphia, his death staged to look accidental. During the search for Petzel's children, Detective Frank Geyer discovered the bodies of Alice and Nellie Petzel buried in a cellar in Toronto. While Howard Petzel's remains were located in Indianapolis, inside a rented house Holmes had used under a false name. Evidence collected from Holmes's Chicago property added to the case. Police reported finding human remains, bone fragments, and surgical equipment in the basement area, along with furnaces and chemical containers believed to have been used to dispose of bodies. While Holmes continued changing his story, alternating between confession and denial, the prosecution built its argument around the murders that could be directly linked to him through recovered bodies, forensic findings, and documented movements across multiple cities. In 1896, Holmes was found guilty and sentenced to death. Even as his execution approached, he continued to manipulate public perception, leaving behind a legacy built not only on crime, but on the power of media to transform a criminal into a legend. H.H. Holmes was executed in 1896, but his name never disappeared from history. What began as a case built around fraud and deception turned into one of the most talked about criminal stories of the 19th century. His actions shocked the public and changed how people viewed trust, business, and personal relationships during a time of rapid growth in America. More than a century later, the story of H.H. Holmes remains one of the darkest chapters in American criminal history, a chilling reminder that monsters don't always look the way we expect.